Israeli terrorist group getting ready for brutal new attack on southern Gaza. Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, has promised to destroy Gaza with full force even after the temporary truce. I would like to make something apparent. Before the truce had even started, he declared, the war is continuing. So it was. We are now rolling out the Gaza Nakba, declared Avi Dichter, Israel's Minister of Agriculture, the most recent public figure to openly proclaim Israel's genocidal intentions, after demolishing 40 to 50% of Gaza's buildings and slaughtering over 15,000 Palestinians. The southern Dizon city of Khan Yunis is Israel's next target. There are currently 700,000 people living there, with half of that number having fled from the north. Israel has bombarded the neighborhoods around Khan Yunis and distributed evacuation notices through leaflets, but the people living there still have nowhere to go. Over 1.5 million Palestinians have already lost their homes as a result, despite the ceasefire. Israeli forces have persisted in killing Palestinians in Jenin and other occupied West Bank cities, confirming fears that Israel intends to permanently expel Palestinians from the northern part of Gaza. Israel opened fire on Gaza residents attempting to return to their homes in the north as the ceasefire started, wounding 11 and killing 2. A humanitarian catastrophe will ensue as soon as hostilities resume due to the extremely low volume of aid, which amounts to no more than 250 trucks by the third day of the ceasefire. Israel's objective of dismantling Hamas remains far off. Many Palestinians still support Hamas and the Al-Qassam brigades. The group's military branch, Hamas, has maintained a cohesive fighting force and has successfully negotiated the exchange of prisoners. In its justification for the siege and subsequent destruction of the Al-Shifa hospital, Israel claimed there was substantial evidence of a terror facility. However, no such evidence was presented. New Palestinian resistance groups will arise regardless of whether Israel manages to depose Hamas due to the magnitude of its atrocities against the Palestinian people. What will remain in Gaza after Israel ceases its bombings is still a mystery. After the war, the U.S. has proposed handing control of Gaza over to the Palestinian Authority. However, Netanyahu has rejected this idea and instead insisted on maintaining direct Israeli security control over Gaza for as long as necessary. As a result, Israel would be free to launch raids on Gaza whenever it pleased, persisting in murder as the war rages on. The United States is openly urging Israel to adopt a targeted strategy that accounts for civilians. This is only one example of how the worldwide call for Palestine's independence affects the thinking of the people who advocate for war, but Arab leaders have persisted in betraying their own people in Palestine. The neighboring Arab states have done little more than make statements as Qatar attempts to take credit for mediating the ceasefire. The 51 Arab and Islamic nations met in the middle of November to discuss various issues, but they all came to different conclusions. Iran had proposed an oil embargo and the cutting of diplomatic ties with Israel, while Algeria had asked for the closure of U.S. bases on their land. They care more about maintaining their lucrative partnership with the U.S. and Israel than they do about assisting the Palestinians. Turkey maintains its trade expansion with Israel, including in steel required for military purposes. Despite its rhetorical support for Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran, two of Iran's allies, have also refrained from providing military aid to Gaza. Despite Israel's careless aggression, the threat of igniting a wider regional conflict has not yet come to pass. Since October 7, at least 8 soldiers have been killed in the bombardment of Syria by both Israel and the United States. From October 10 to the 16th, Israel bombarded Lebanon with white phosphorus. If U.S. President Joe Biden so desired, he could put a stop to the crimes immediately. The United States and its allies, including the Australian government, are funding this genocide. Since October 7, the United States has sent an extra $14.3 billion in aid to Israel, sent 2 amphibious Navy ships, a second U.S. aircraft carrier strike group, and thousands of troops to the area to be ready to deploy if needed, according to John Kirby, national security spokesperson for the White House. The United States has sanctioned Israel's genocide because it has refused to establish red lines for the Israeli government, and within Israel, there is no dependable component of restraint either. Internal Israeli protests against Netanyahu have, at times, campaigned against a ceasefire and even aid to Gaza, focusing only on Israeli hostages. The Hamas resistance and the global movement of millions of people demanding an end to Israel's slaughter secured the temporary ceasefire. The profit-seeking system and imperialist alliances that have led to genocide are being rejected by people all over the world, from Egypt to Australia. It is imperative that we step up our protests and put more pressure on our leaders. The fate of the Palestinian people is at stake.